I was a choir boy at my parish church in London, England, and as my voice changed, I was looking for something to do with my friends, and we decided that we'd try and join the bell ringing fraternity, which we didn't know too much about at that time. And we went up there, and surprise, surprise, there were girls there too, so that was an added bonus as far as we were concerned. In fact, I met my wife in the belfry, and we've been there together ever since.
My mum and dad actually have been ringers forever, and it was one of those things that growing up I had no interest in ringing at all because that's what Dad did and it wasn't cool. And then my wife, who is Canadian, was living in England at the time, and she had a friend who was a ringer, and she went ringing with this friend and then was like, that's a really cool, quintessentially English thing, I could get into that. And so I actually went along with her, and it was through that that got me into ringing.
I married ringing. I married ringing 35 years ago. I was living in Britain at the time and met the person who became my husband, and I was quite interested in this folk art that I had never seen before. He very wisely said that no, he would not teach me to ring, but he would get his brother to teach me to ring. And it's been part of our life ever since. Change ringing has played a part in a lot of things that we do and how we plan our lives.
My wife was a member of St. James's for a long time before I joined St. James's. She told me that they were actually in the process, or just starting the process, of fundraising for bells. Both of us agreed that we would become bell ringers and take all of the lessons and all of the abuse that goes with bell ringing. And I say abuse, it's kindly abuse. It was invaluable teaching.
Bells have been used for many, many years for creating sounds within a community. And generally they're warning sounds, or they're the sounds for timing, for clocks.
The sounding of the bells was a communication system. It was partly to gather people together. Usually the church clock or the sounding of the bells, the curfew and the morning prayer and so on, was the only timing process that villagers had with regard to what time it was.
If we think about it, the French word for bell is cloche. So there's a lot of interchange of ideas and so on.
The actual tower itself is a lovely old tower. Down at the bottom, it's 8 feet thick, the walls, 8 feet. Up in the bell chamber where the bells sit, it's 6 feet thick. It was the choir boys. They tend to be a bit boisterous the best of times. And they would come up here and clamber the walls whichever way they could, and they'd write their initials, and the higher that they could get, the better. Maybe it was graffiti in its own way in that day, but they put the name down, wrote down, and put the date.
And I know if you go into towers in England, there's graffiti from the Black Plague where the vicar went up the tower and said, God, what have you done to us? What have I done wrong? So what might be graffiti to one person is quite neat snippets of history to others.
Change ringing is a way that we can make music from the sounds of bells, collections of bells put together. There are two different arrangements of bells. One is a carillon, where the bells are static and the clapper is swung to make the sounds. Change ringing is performed on bells which swing, and they swing through 360 degrees, striking once on the way around. And that takes about 2 seconds. Now, because of that 2 seconds delay, we can't have the same sound twice without that big delay. So you can't play regular tunes. So what we do is to something like a computer system, a binary system, where two bells will change with each other. One goes forward and one goes back a place, or they stay in the same place. And when a collection of bells together are all moving in these different directions, we call that change ringing. And then we have different methods or principles to learn beforehand. And some of the methods are very, very complex. We ring some fairly complex ones here, but we're not maybe as skilled as some of the really good ringers in Britain.
Myself, there's a method, Grancer. I like that one. It sounds pretty good when it's rung properly. Stedman's another one, but I'm not one of the better ringers, so the really hard stuff gets left to them. But I guess my third pick would be one called Cambridge. That's one that I'm working on as well.
It's interesting. It's pretty challenging. It's a little bit frustrating sometimes because you have a very, very, very small space of time in which to make sure your bell strikes in the right position. Something like 3/100ths of a second to get the strike absolutely spot on. It's pretty challenging because every set of bells is different. They all have their individual characteristics. The bells shouldn't be temperamental, but in a sense they kind of are. They have personalities.
And they're all different. Every tower is different, every set of bells is different, and even within the tower each individual bell has a very different character. And the beauty of change ringing is that there's always something to be challenging yourself with. It doesn't matter whether you're a beginner or an expert, there's always another step that you could be striving to achieve.
In the 1600s, there was a series of bells, and they were called the Waterloo bells. And sounds fascinating in its own way, but what they were basically they were the bells that were cast after the Battle of Waterloo. French cannons were taken and melted down, made into bells. Well, I think anybody would agree that having bells is better than having cannons. So perhaps if we melted all the guns in the world down and made bells, we'd be a lot happier and a lot safer.